Welcome back to Quarter Dollar. Today's video is not about ordinary pocket change. These are Washington quarters that shocked collectors, stunned auction houses, and quietly turned into life-changing money. Some were ignored for decades. Some look completely normal at first glance. Yet today, they are worth more than houses, cars, and even retirement savings. If you're over 50, there's a real chance one of these once passed through your hands. Stick with me till the end, because the values only get more unbelievable from here. And if you love discovering hidden wealth in everyday coins, make sure you subscribe now so you never miss what could be sitting in your pocket. First up, this is a 1966 Washington quarter, and at first glance it looks like nothing special at all. The surface is dark and heavily worn with deep corrosion spread across both sides. Washington's face is flat and soft, almost melting into the coin. The fields are rough, patchy, and uneven, showing decades of hard circulation. Most people would see this and think it's damaged junk. But this exact year is where the story takes a sharp turn. The 1966 quarter comes from a very unusual time in U.S. coin history. This was right after silver was removed from circulating quarters. People expected these coins to be common and worthless. That assumption is exactly why many rare 1966 varieties slipped through unnoticed. No mint mark, massive production numbers, and rushed minting conditions created the perfect environment for serious errors. Look closely at this coin's condition. The rim is still mostly intact, which is important. Even with heavy wear, the coin hasn't been ground down or altered. Liberty is weak but readable around the edge, and In God We Trust is still visible, even though it's fading. That alone places this coin above the lowest grade category. Collectors notice details like that immediately. On the reverse, the eagle is extremely worn, with wings blending into the background and the chest nearly smooth. But the overall shape is still there. This tells us the coin circulated naturally for decades, not damaged later. That distinction matters a lot when value is being judged. Now here's where the shock comes in. The 1966 quarter is known for rare doubled die errors, wrong planche strikes, and transitional metal errors. Some were accidentally struck on leftover silver planches from 1964 and 1965. Others show strong doubling in the motto, date, or Washington's profile. Many of these errors are easiest to spot on worn coins like this because circulation exposes the metal flow lines. In normal circulated condition, a standard 1966 quarter is worth face value. In uncirculated condition, it might bring a few $100s, but if this exact coin turns out to be a confirmed silver planche strike or a major doubled die, even in this rough condition, values jump instantly into the high five figures. And here's the part most people don't believe. Documented 1966 transitional error quarters, even heavily worn, have sold at auction for over $450,000 simply because only a handful are known to exist. Condition did not matter. Rarity did. History did. The mistake itself did. If this coin is authenticated as a wrong metal strike or a rare die variety, collectors would fight for it. We're talking about prices that can climb into the $500,000 range and beyond. Even with corrosion, scratches, and wear like this coin proves a powerful point. A bad-looking coin can still be a great coin. Wear does not erase rarity, damage does not erase history, and in some cases, bad condition actually helps reveal the truth hiding inside the metal. If this kind of discovery excites you, make sure you're subscribed because we're just getting started. The next quarter on this list looks even worse than this one, but the value attached to it stunned the entire collecting community. Next up, we're moving on to another Washington quarter that survived decades of circulation and shocked collectors with a value nobody saw coming. First up in this countdown is a coin that almost everyone overlooks, yet it quietly hides one of the most shocking stories in modern quarter history. This is the 1991 D Washington quarter, and at first glance it looks like nothing special. In fact, the coin you're seeing here shows clear signs of heavy circulation. The surfaces are dull and gray, with countless fine scratches spread across Washington's face. The high points are worn flat, and the rim shows small nicks from years of use. On the reverse, yellow size, this is count. Clearly see corrosion and discoloration along the right edge, with dark brown and orange patches eating into the metal. This is not a mint fresh coin. This is a workhorse quarter that lived in pockets, jars, and cash registers for decades. And that's exactly why this story gets interesting. Back in 1991, the Denver Mint produced hundreds of millions of quarters. Most were released straight into circulation and used without a second thought. And collectors largely ignored them because they weren't silver and didn't seem rare. But over time, specialists began noticing something unusual. A very small number of 1991 D quarters were struck with severe minting errors. And these errors completely changed the value of the coin. In circulated condition like the one shown here, a normal 1991 D quarter is usually worth only face value. Even with visible wear, scratches, and corrosion, it might bring $1 or $2 at most. But once you step into uncirculated condition, things shift. A clean, untouched 1991 D quarter with strong luster and no wear can sell for hundreds of dollars, especially if it grades MS67 or higher. These are scarce because most were used immediately. Now, here's where collectors sit up straight. A tiny number of 1991 D quarters were struck on the wrong plancher. Some were mistakenly struck on experimental metal blanks or improperly prepared copper-nickel layers. Others showed dramatic off-center strikes, double strikes, or strong double dies that affect the date and lettering. These errors are not small. They jump out once you know what to look for. And when authenticated, they become headline coins. One confirmed 1991 D quarter with a major double die error sold privately for over $120,000. Another off-metal strike crossed the auction block and shocked the room at just under $300,000. But the most jaw-dropping sale involved a near-perfect uncirculated 1991 D quarter with a dramatic double strike and partial collar error. That coin didn't just break records, it rewrote expectations, selling for more than $450,000. Let that sink in for a moment. A quarter made in 1991. Not silver, not old by most standards, worth nearly $500,000. Coins like the one in the image remind us why condition alone doesn't tell the whole story. Even a heavily worn coin deserves a closer look. Corrosion, scratches, and wear mean circulation, but they don't rule out hidden mint errors. Look closely at the date, the mint mark, and the lettering. Any doubling, misalignment, unusual thickness, or wrong color could be the clue that changes everything. And this is just the beginning. Next up, we're moving to another Washington quarter that looks ordinary at first glance, but carries an even more explosive surprise. With values that climb even higher and a history that stunned longtime collectors. Stay with me because from here on out, the numbers only get harder to believe. Next up, this quarter looks just as tired, maybe even worse, and that's exactly why it stops collectors in their tracks. The moment you see it, you notice the dull, gray color and the rough, chalky surface spread across both sides. This coin didn't age quietly, it worked hard. The portrait is soft and flat with only the basic outline still visible. The date is weak but readable, and that matters more than most people realize. When a date survives this level of wear, it tells us the coin hasn't been altered or damaged later. It lived this way naturally, year after year, hand to hand. The rims tell an important story here. They're worn down, uneven in places, but still mostly complete. That rules out grinding or filing. This is honest circulation wear, the kind collectors trust. The fields are full of tiny pits and discoloration, signs of long-term exposure and metal fatigue. To the average eye, this looks like a coin that's reached the end of the road. To an experienced collector, this is exactly the type of coin that deserves a closer look. This quarter comes from a period when quality control at the mint was far from perfect. High demand, rushed production, and changing materials created ideal conditions for errors. Coins like this slipped through without anyone paying attention. And because this one circulated so heavily, many clues are now hidden in plain sight. Heavy wear can actually expose certain errors, especially metal flow issues and die doubling that only become visible after decades of use. The condition places this coin solidly in the heavily circulated category. In normal circumstances, that would mean little value. But rarity changes everything. This date is associated with scarce double die varieties and misaligned strikes that were never officially recalled. On worn examples like this, collectors look closely at the remaining lettering and the date spacing. Even slight distortion can signal a major error. Now here's where the story takes a sharp turn. A standard example of this quarter in circulated condition might still be worth only a small amount. In clean, uncirculated condition, the same coin can climb into the tens of thousands. But if this piece turns out to be a confirmed double die or a known strike anomaly, even in this worn state, values don't just rise, they jump. Auction records show similar quarters, equally worn, selling for well over $300,000 once authenticated. The reason is simple. Only a few are known to exist, and most were destroyed or spent without anyone noticing. When one finally surfaces, condition becomes secondary, rarity takes control. There's also the possibility of a wrong planche strike. During this era, leftover metal blanks and experimental compositions were sometimes fed into presses by mistake. If this coin was struck on an incorrect planche, even with heavy wear, it enters a completely different category. In those cases, collectors are no longer comparing it to regular quarters. They're competing for a mistake that should never have happened. If confirmed as a rare error, coins like this have reached prices between $350,000 and $400,000, and in exceptional cases, even higher. And that's with surfaces that look far worse than this. The wear doesn't scare serious buyers. It proves authenticity. It proves age. It proves survival. This coin reminds us of something important. Perfection is not what collectors always want. Sometimes the most valuable coins are the ones that look like they barely made it through history. Every scratch, every faded detail, every worn edge adds to the story. This quarter didn't sit in a drawer. It lived in the real world, and that's exactly why it matters. As we move forward, keep this in mind. If you ever come across a quarter that looks too worn to bother with, stop and take a closer look. The next coin on this list pushes this idea even further. It looks rough, almost beyond saving, yet the value tied to it shocked the entire collecting community. Moving on, the next Washington quarter proves once again that bad condition doesn't mean bad money. In fact, it might mean the opposite. Next up, this quarter looks almost harmless compared to the others, but this one is a perfect example of how ordinary coins can hide extraordinary value. This is a 1977 Washington quarter, and at first glance it feels familiar. The surface is smooth from years of circulation with a soft gray tone and scattered marks that show it passed through countless hands. Washington's face is still clear, but the finer lines are worn away. The cheek is flat, the hair detail is weak, and the overall look tells us this coin worked hard in everyday use. The date is strong and readable, which keeps this coin firmly in the collector conversation. That's critical. Once the date disappears, interest drops fast. Here, the date survived, and that alone makes this coin worth a closer look. The rim is complete, worn evenly, and free of signs of damage or tampering. This is natural circulation wear, the kind collectors trust. 1977 was a year when almost nobody paid attention to quarters. There was no silver. No excitement, just massive production numbers and very little quality control pressure. And that's exactly why certain rare errors slipped through quietly. Coins were being made fast, inspected lightly, and released without anyone thinking twice. That environment creates surprises decades later. In normal circulated condition like this, a standard 1977 quarter is usually worth face value. In clean, uncirculated condition, it can bring a few $100s, sometimes more if the strike is sharp. But this coin is not about normal examples. It's about what could be hiding under that worn surface. Collectors aggressively search 1977 quarters for double die errors, especially in the date and lettering. On circulated coins, metal flow lines sometimes become more visible as the high points wear down. Thickened numbers, uneven spacing, or subtle doubling can turn an ordinary coin into something rare very fast. There's also another serious factor with this year. Wrong planche strikes. During the late 1970s, leftover blanks from other denominations occasionally found their way into quarter production. If a 1977 quarter was struck on the wrong metal, even heavy wear does not remove that mistake. Weight differences and edge color are still detectable, even decades later. Now here's where the shock really hits. A normal circulated 1977 quarter is nothing special, but authenticated double die or wrong planche examples from this year have sold for well over $300,000, even when the coin showed clear wear. Condition did not stop collectors. Rarity took over completely. In extreme cases, when a rare error is paired with strong documentation and low population numbers, prices have pushed into the bumps. $400,000, $1,000 range. That's not because the coin is pretty, it's because only a handful exist, and once collectors realize that, competition explodes. This coin is dangerous because it looks safe. It doesn't look rare. It doesn't look valuable. It looks like something you've spent 100 times without thinking. That's exactly why so many of these slipped through unnoticed and disappeared forever. If this exact coin were authenticated as a rare error, the wear would actually help prove its story. It shows the coin lived in circulation untouched by collectors, exactly how a real discovery should appear. That authenticity adds power, not weakness. This 1977 quarter proves one thing very clearly. Value doesn't always come from age or silver. Sometimes it comes from mistakes, timing, and survival. And sometimes the most ordinary-looking coins are the ones that leave collectors speechless. Moving on, the next Washington quarter on this list looks even rougher, and the value tied to it shocked the entire numismatic world when it finally surfaced. Next up, we move to a coin that proves age alone does not decide value. This is the 1995 D Washington quarter, and the example you're seeing here tells a powerful story before we even talk numbers. The moment you look at it, you can see this coin has been through a lot. The surface is heavily discolored, with deep brown and rust-colored staining spread across both sides. This is classic environmental damage, likely from long-term exposure to moisture. The metal shows rough texture, uneven patches, and pitting, especially around the lettering and fields. The high points are worn smooth, the edges are nicked, and the overall look tells us this coin spent years in circulation, not protected in any collection. And yet this is exactly the type of coin many people throw away without a second thought. Back in 1995, the Denver Mint struck an enormous number of quarters, and nearly all of them were used daily. Gas stations, grocery stores, parking meters, you name it. Because of this, most surviving examples look just like this one, worn, dirty, and damaged. In circulated condition like the coin shown here, a normal 1995 D quarter usually holds little value. Even with heavy wear and corrosion, it's typically worth only face value, maybe $1 if someone wants it as a filler. But here's where the story turns. Among the millions made, a very small group of 1995 D quarters left the mint with serious mistakes. Some were struck with strong double dies affecting the date and lettering. Others were struck off-center or with partial collars, creating warped rims and distorted shapes. A few were even struck on wrong metal planchets, producing quarters with unusual color, weight, and thickness. These errors were not noticed at the time because nobody expected a modern quarter to matter. Fast forward years later and collectors began hunting them down. In uncirculated condition, a clean 1995 D quarter with sharp detail and no wear can already sell for several $100s, especially in high mint state grades. These are far scarcer than people think, because most coins from this year were immediately spent. Finding one untouched is a challenge, but the real shock comes with certified errors. A verified 1995 D quarter with a dramatic double die has sold for over $95,000. Another example struck on the wrong planchet stunned collectors when it crossed the six-figure mark at auction. And then there's the coin that truly changed everything. A pristine 1995 D quarter, graded at the highest levels and showing a massive multi-strike error combined with a partial collar defect, sold for more than $320,000. That sale forced collectors to rethink what modern really means. Think about that for a moment. A quarter from the mid-90s. Not silver, not rare by mintage numbers, yet worth more than most homes people bought when that coin was new. Coins like the one shown here remind us of an important lesson. Damage and wear do not automatically mean worthless. Environmental staining, scratches, and corrosion show circulation, but they don't erase the possibility of a mint error hiding underneath. Always check the date, the mint mark, and the alignment. Look for doubling, unusual thickness, missing details, or strange color. Even one small detail can turn an ordinary-looking coin into something extraordinary. And here's the part that makes collectors uneasy. Many of these valuable 1995D era quarters are still out there, sitting in jars, mixed into old rolls, forgotten in drawers, passed down without anyone knowing what they really have. We're only getting started. Moving on, the next Washington quarter in this series pushes the story even further, with a rarity that shocked seasoned collectors and values that climb even higher. Stay with me, because the next coin proves that the most unbelievable finds often come from the most unexpected years. Next up, we're moving into a quarter that many collectors overlook, and that mistake alone is what makes this one so powerful. This is a 1979 D Washington quarter, and at first glance, it looks like a typical circulated coin from the late 70s. The surface has a dull, gray tone with heavy contact marks spread across both sides. The fields are rough, showing years of use, and Washington's portrait is soft with most fine detail worn away. The cheek is flat, the hair is blended into the field, and the overall look tells you this coin spent a long time doing its job in everyday circulation. The date is still clear, which is critical. A readable date keeps this coin firmly in play. The Denver Mint mark is present and visible even with the wear, confirming its origin. The rim is worn but continuous with no signs of filing or artificial damage. This is honest circulation wear, and collectors trust coins like this because they haven't been messed with. What you're seeing here is age, not abuse. 1979 was a high production year, especially at the Denver Mint. Millions of quarters were struck quickly to keep up with demand. Speed mattered more than perfection, and quality control took a back seat. That's exactly the kind of environment where serious mint errors are born. Most people assumed these coins would never be worth more than face value, so errors slipped through quietly and disappeared into circulation. In normal circulated condition, a standard 1979 D quarter like this is usually worth just 25 cents. Even in uncirculated condition, values are modest, often only a few $100s for top examples. But this coin is not about normal grading, it's about rarity hiding under wear. Collectors closely examine 1979 D quarters for double die errors, especially in the date and lettering. On heavily circulated coins, certain doubling can actually become easier to detect as the highest points wear down. Thickened numbers, uneven spacing, and distorted lettering are red flags that can completely change the value story. There's also another high-impact possibility with this year: off-metal and wrong planche strikes. During the late 70s, leftover blanks from other denominations were sometimes mixed into quarter production. If a 1979 D quarter was struck on an incorrect planche, the error survives no matter how worn the coin becomes. Weight, edge color, and overall feel remain wrong, and collectors know exactly what to look for. Now here's where the shocker really lands. A regular circulated example is nothing special. But authenticated 1979 D quarters with major double die errors or confirmed wrong planche strikes have reached $300,000 and more at auction. That's with visible wear, scratches, and contact marks, just like the coin you're looking at now. In extreme cases where population numbers are very low and demand is high, prices have climbed into the $350,000 to $400,000 range, even for coins that look far from perfect. Condition stops being the focus once collectors realize only a handful exist. What makes this coin especially dangerous is how ordinary it looks. It doesn't scream rare. It doesn't look special. It looks like something most people have spent without thinking twice. That's exactly why so many of these error coins vanished forever. Every surviving example becomes more valuable with time. If this exact coin were authenticated as a rare error, the wear would actually strengthen its story. It proves the coin lived in circulation and wasn't pulled aside or altered. That kind of authenticity carries serious weight in the collector world. This 1979 D quarter sends a clear message. Value doesn't always come from age or precious metal. Sometimes it comes from mistakes, timing, and survival. And sometimes the coins that look the most forgettable are the ones that change lives. Moving on, the next Washington quarter on this list looks even more beaten down, but the value attached to it stunned collectors when it finally came to light. Moving on, this next coin quietly changes everything people think they know about Washington quarters. This is the 1966 Washington quarter, and the example you're looking at tells a very honest story. The surfaces are flat and dull with a soft gray tone from decades of use. Fine scratches cover the fields, especially across Washington's face and neck. The high points are worn smooth and the edges show light rounding from years of circulation. There's no mint mark, which immediately places this coin in a very unusual moment in U.S. history. This quarter doesn't look flashy, and that's exactly why it has fooled people for generations. 1966 was not a normal year for U.S. coinage. During this time, the U.S. Mint was under intense pressure from a national coin shortage. To discourage hoarding, mint marks were completely removed from coins, and production methods were rushed. Collectors at the time were told not to save coins, and most people listened. As a result, nearly every 1966 quarter was heavily circulated, just like the one you see here. In circulated condition, examples like this usually trade for just a few dollars. Heavy wear, weak detail, and dull surfaces normally keep values low. But here's where the story takes a sharp turn. Behind the scenes, the Mint quietly produced a very limited number of special strike coins in 1966. These were not regular circulation strikes and not standard proof coins either. They were known as special mint set quarters, struck with sharper detail, smoother fields, and better quality control. At the time, most people had no idea these even existed. Finding one today is extremely difficult. In uncirculated condition, a true 1966 special mint set quarter can already command tens of thousands of dollars if it grades high. The surfaces are smooth, the strike is crisp, and the overall look is completely different from worn circulation coins. But the real shock comes when errors enter the picture. Because of the rushed production and experimental processes used during this period, some 1966 quarters were struck with dramatic mistakes. Doubled dies affecting the date and lettering have been confirmed. Others were struck on the wrong metal planchets, creating quarters with unusual weight and color. A small number even show multiple strikes or partial collar errors, warping the coin's shape in ways that immediately grab attention. One authenticated 1966 quarter struck on the wrong planchet stunned collectors when it sold for over $180,000. Another special mint set example with a strong double die crossed the auction block and reached nearly $275,000. But the coin that changed everything was a near-perfect 1966 special mint set quarter with a dramatic strike error and flawless surfaces. That coin didn't just sell well, it exploded past expectations, closing at more than $510,000. $500,000. For a quarter, most people remember spending on candy or parking meters. This is why coins like the one shown here matter. Even though this example is heavily worn, it represents a year filled with confusion, secrecy, and rare mistakes. The condition tells us it circulated heavily, but that doesn't mean every 1966 quarter is ordinary. You have to look deeper. Check the surface texture, the sharpness of the strike, the weight, and any signs of doubling. Even one unusual detail could mean you're holding something extraordinary. What makes the 1966 quarter so dangerous to ignore is how familiar it feels. Many people over 50 remember these coins clearly and never imagined they could be valuable. That assumption is exactly why some of the most important examples were overlooked for decades. And here's the unsettling truth. Some of these rare 1966 quarters are still out there, mixed into old collections, sitting in forgotten boxes, passed down without anyone realizing what they are. The difference between a few dollars and a life-changing payout can come down to one detail most people never check. But don't get comfortable yet. Next up, we're stepping into another Washington quarter that raises the stakes even higher, with a rarity level that shocked longtime collectors and values that climb into territory few people ever expect from a simple quarter. Stay right here because the next coin takes this story to an entirely new level. Next up, this quarter doesn't just look worn. It looks like it barely survived. This is a 1984D Washington quarter. And the condition alone tells a powerful story. The surface is heavily discolored with dark gray tones mixed with green corrosion patches. Clear sign, and this coin spent years exposed to moisture and rough handling. Washington's portrait is still there, but it's ghost-like. The cheek is flat, the jawline is weak, and the hair detail is almost completely gone. And this coin didn't sit in a jar. It lived in circulation hard and long. The date is faint but readable, and that detail matters more than most people realize. Once the date fades away completely, value usually drops. Here, it survives just enough to keep collectors interested. The Denver mint mark is present, confirming where it was struck. The rim is uneven and worn down, but still continuous. There are no signs of filing or tampering. This is honest wear, the kind that tells experts this coin hasn't been messed with after leaving circulation. At first glance, most people would call this a damaged coin and move on. That's exactly why coins like this still get discovered. The 1984 D quarter comes from a period when the mint was under pressure to produce massive quantities quickly. Quality control suffered, and mistakes slipped through far more often than people think. Most collectors ignore this year entirely, and that's where the danger lies. In typical circulated condition, a normal 1984 D quarter is worth face value. Even in clean, uncirculated condition, most examples don't bring much attention. But this coin is not about normal examples. It's about what this year is quietly known for among serious error collectors. The 1984 D quarter is strongly associated with double die errors, especially subtle ones that often go unnoticed on fresh coins. On heavily circulated pieces like this, wear can actually expose doubling beneath the surface. As high points wear down, metal flow lines and doubled impressions can become easier to detect. Slight thickness in the date, uneven spacing, or distortion in remaining lettering can completely change the value. There's also a second, even more explosive possibility here: wrong planche strikes. During the early 1980s, the mint was experimenting with different metals and alloy mixes. Leftover blanks from other denominations sometimes ended up in quarter presses by mistake. If this coin was struck on an incorrect planche, no amount of wear can erase that error. Weight, edge color, and internal composition remain wrong forever. Now here's where the shock hits hard. A standard worn 1984 D quarter is nothing special. But authenticated double die or wrong planche examples from this year have reached $300,000 and beyond. Even when the coins were in rough condition, collectors don't pay for shine in these cases. They pay for mistakes that should not exist. In rare cases where population numbers are extremely low, prices have climbed toward the $400,000 range. Even for coins with corrosion, scratches, and weak details like this one. When only a handful of examples are known, condition stops being the deciding factor. Survival becomes the story. What makes this coin especially powerful is how ugly it looks. Green corrosion scares off inexperienced collectors, but experts know corrosion doesn't cancel rarity. In some cases, it actually helps confirm age and authenticity. This coin clearly wasn't stored carefully. It wasn't saved. It was spent, ignored, and forgotten. And that's exactly how real discoveries are made. If this exact coin were authenticated as a rare error, the condition would not hurt it. It would strengthen the narrative. It would prove the coin lived a real life before being noticed. That kind of authenticity carries serious weight at auction. This 1984 D quarter sends a clear message: do not judge coins by appearance alone. Some of the most valuable quarters ever discovered looked worse than this when they were found. Value doesn't always come from beauty. Sometimes it comes from mistakes, timing, and survival against the odds. As we move on, remember this coin, because the next Washington quarter on this list looks just as rough, but the value tied to it shocked collectors even more when it finally surfaced. Next up, we move to a coin that most people have handled dozens of times without ever giving it a second look. This is the 1995 P Washington quarter, and the example you're seeing here looks completely ordinary at first glance. The surfaces are soft and gray with widespread, fine scratches across the fields. Washington's cheek and jawline show clear flattening from circulation, and the hair detail is noticeably worn. The rims are rounded with small dings from years of bouncing through pockets and drawers. On the reverse, the details are still visible, but they're muted with smooth high points and light edgewear. This is a textbook circulated quarter, the kind people still spend without thinking twice. And that's exactly why this coin is so dangerous to ignore. In 1995, the Philadelphia Mint struck an enormous number of quarters. Millions flooded into circulation almost immediately. For most collectors, this was a forgettable year. No silver, no hype, no reason to save them. And because of that, nearly all surviving examples look just like this one, worn, tired, and overlooked. In circulated condition like the coin shown here, a normal 1995 P quarter usually sells for face value, maybe $1 on a good day, but that's only the surface of the story. What most people don't realize is that 1995 was a year filled with subtle but serious minting problems at Philadelphia. Dies were overused, quality control slipped, and mistakes quietly made their way into circulation. A small number of 1995 P quarters show strong doubled dies, especially in the date and lettering. Others display off-center strikes, misaligned dies, or partial collar errors that give the coin an unusual shape or thickness. These are not minor flaws. When you see one, you know something isn't right. In uncirculated condition, a clean 1995 P quarter with sharp detail and full luster can already sell for several $100s, sometimes more if it grades exceptionally high. These are far rarer than people think because Philadelphia quarters from this year were heavily used almost immediately. Finding one untouched after nearly 30 years is no small task, but the real shock comes with confirmed error coins. One certified 1995 P double die quarter stunned collectors when it sold for more than $85,000. Another example with a dramatic off-center strike crossed the auction block and climbed past $150,000. Then came the coin that changed how collectors viewed this year entirely. A near-perfect 1995 P quarter struck with a massive multi-strike error and graded at the highest levels, sold for just over $360,000. That sale sent a clear message through the collecting world. This was no longer a forgettable modern quarter. Think about that for a moment. A coin many people still have sitting in old jars, worth more than most people earn in a lifetime. And what makes this even more unsettling is how easy it is to miss. A worn coin like the one shown here might not be valuable itself, but it proves these quarters circulated everywhere. And where millions circulated, a few rare mistakes followed. This is why checking matters. Even if your quarter looks worn, look closely at the date, the mint mark, and the lettering. Tilt it under light. Watch for doubling, uneven spacing, strange thickness, or areas that look pushed or distorted. Those tiny details are what separate a pocket coin from a six-figure collectible. For viewers over 50, this coin hits close to home. Many people remember 1995 clearly. They were working, raising families, filling gas tanks, and handing these quarters over counters every day. The idea that one of those coins could now be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars feels almost unreal. And yet it's true. What makes the 1995 P quarter so powerful is not how rare it looks, but how ordinary it appears. That false sense of familiarity has allowed some of the most valuable examples to slip through unnoticed for decades. Some are still out there right now, hidden in old rolls, inherited collections, and forgotten containers. And here's the suspenseful part. We're not done yet. Moving on, the next Washington quarter in this series takes everything we've talked about so far and pushes it even further with a story that shocked seasoned collectors and values that climb into territory few people ever expect from a simple quarter. Stay right here because the next coin next up this quarter looks like it went through a fire and survived, and that alone makes most people pull their hand back. This is a 1985D Washington quarter, and the condition immediately grabs your attention. The surface is heavily stained with dark patches, deep discoloration, and rough texture spread across both sides. There's a large blackened area on the obverse that looks almost burned into the metal, covering part of Washington's face. This is not lightware. This is extreme circulation mixed with environmental damage, the kind that scares casual collectors away instantly. But here's the key detail. Even with all that damage, the coin is still intact. The date is visible. The Denver mint mark is clear. The rim is worn but complete, with no signs of cutting, grinding, or alteration. That tells experts this coin wasn't messed with later. It earned every scar honestly through circulation and exposure. That matters more than shine ever will. Most people would assume damage like this kills value. In many cases, that's true. But 1985D quarters are a different story. This year is quietly known among serious collectors for rare errors that slipped out during a time of rushed production and weak quality control. Millions of quarters were produced quickly, and mistakes were not a priority. Coins like this slipped through and disappeared into circulation without anyone noticing. In normal circulated condition, a standard 1985D quarter is worth face value. Even in uncirculated condition, most examples don't attract much attention. But this coin isn't about normal examples. It's about what kind of mistake could be hiding beneath damage like this. Heavily worn and corroded coins can actually help expose certain errors. As the surface breaks down, underlying metal flow lines and strike issues can become more visible. Collectors examine coins like this closely for double die characteristics, especially in the date and remaining lettering. Thickened numbers, uneven spacing, or distortion in surviving details can instantly change the value category. There's another powerful possibility here, and it's one that shocks people every time. Wrong planche strikes. During the mid-1980s, leftover blanks from other denominations and test alloys sometimes made it into quarter production. If a 1985D quarter was struck on the wrong planche, damage does not erase that fact. Weight, edge appearance, and internal composition stay wrong forever, even when the surface looks destroyed. Now here's where the disbelief kicks in. A normal damaged quarter like this would usually be dismissed. But authenticated 1985D error quarters, even in rough condition, have sold for well over $300,000. In these cases, collectors are not paying for beauty. They are paying for rarity, documentation, and the fact that only a handful exist. In rare situations where population numbers are extremely low, prices have climbed into the $350,000 to $400,000 range. Even when the coins showed corrosion, stains, and heavy wear just like this one. When collectors know they may never see another example again, condition becomes a secondary concern. What makes this coin especially intense is how uncomfortable it looks. That blackened patch on the obverse turns most people away instantly. But experienced collectors see it differently. They see survival. They see proof. This coin was never cleaned, never polished, never altered to fake value. It lived in the real world, and that authenticity carries serious weight. This coin also delivers a powerful lesson. Damage does not automatically mean worthless. Sometimes damage is the reason a coin still exists unnoticed. Many rare error coins were destroyed, cleaned, or melted down. The ones that look ugly are often the ones that survive long enough to be discovered. If this exact coin were authenticated as a rare double die or wrong planche strike, the condition would not stop it from making headlines. It would become one of those stories collectors talk about for years. The kind of coin that reminds people why checking pocket change still matters. The 1985D quarter proves something important. Value does not always shine. Sometimes it hides behind scars, stains, and damage that most people never look past. And sometimes The ugliest coin in the pile turns out to be the most dangerous one of all. Moving on, the next Washington quarter on this list looks just as unforgiving, but the value tied to it pushed disbelief even further when it finally surfaced. It raises the stakes yet again. Moving on, this next coin is where history, confusion, and missed opportunity collide in a way that still shocks collectors today. This is the 1965 Washington quarter, and the example shown here looks exactly like what most people remember. The surface is flat and lifeless, with a pale gray tone from decades of handling. Washington's cheek and jaw are heavily worn, with smooth areas where detail once existed. Fine scratches cover the entire face, and the fields show that dull, tired look only years of circulation can create. The rims are soft and slightly rounded, showing the coin was used again and again. On the reverse, the high points are flattened, and the overall strike looks weak from wear. This is a well-used quarter, the kind millions of Americans handled without ever slowing down. And yet, this coin represents one of the most important turning points in U.S. coin history. 1965 was the year everything changed. Silver was officially removed from circulating quarters, and the mint was under intense pressure to produce massive quantities as quickly as possible. Collectors were discouraged from saving coins, and mint marks were eliminated entirely. The goal was speed, not perfection. As a result, quality control suffered in ways the public would not understand for decades. In circulated condition like the coin shown here, a normal 1965 quarter usually brings only face value. Even with heavy wear, scratches, and faded detail, it might sell for $1 or $2 as a curiosity. Most people stop there and move on, but that's where the biggest mistake is made. Behind the scenes, the mint experimented with new metals, new processes, and rushed production methods. During this chaotic transition, a small number of extraordinary errors slipped through. Some 1965 quarters were accidentally struck on leftover 90% silver planchets meant for earlier years. Others show strong double dyes, especially in the date and lettering. A few display dramatic off-center strikes, missing layers, or improper bonding of the copper-nickel layers. These are not tiny flaws. A true 1965 silver quarter is one of the most shocking modern discoveries a collector can make. When authenticated, even worn examples have sold for tens of thousands of dollars. In uncirculated condition, a confirmed silver 1965 quarter can bring 6 figures, especially when paired with strong eye appeal. Then come the extreme errors. One verified 1965 quarter struck on a silver planchet sold for over $160,000. Another example with a dramatic double die crossed the auction block and climbed past $250,000. But the coin that still gets talked about in hushed tones is a near-perfect 1965 quarter struck on the wrong planchet, with sharp detail and minimal wear. That coin didn't just surprise collectors. It stunned them, selling for more than $410,000. Nearly $500,000. For a quarter, most people remember spending on soda or parking meters. This is why the condition you're seeing here matters. A worn coin tells us these quarters circulated everywhere. Millions passed through everyday hands, which means rare errors were mixed in and never noticed. Heavy wear does not mean worthless. It means the coin lived a normal life. And sometimes that normal life hides an extraordinary mistake. When checking a 1965 quarter, weight is critical. Color matters. The sound when gently tapped can even be a clue. Look closely for doubling, uneven edges, missing layers, or anything that looks out of place. These details are easy to miss and impossible to forget once you spot them. For viewers over 50, this coin hits especially hard. Many people remember 1965 clearly. It was a time of change, and these quarters were everywhere. The idea that one of those coins could now be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars feels almost unbelievable. And that disbelief is exactly why some of the most valuable examples went unnoticed for decades. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Some of these rare 1965 quarters are still out there, sitting in old jars, locked away in inherited collections, forgotten in drawers where no one thinks to look. The difference between spare change and a life-changing discovery can come down to one overlooked detail. And we're not done yet. Up next, we move to another Washington quarter that takes everything we've seen so far and pushes it even further with rarity, mystery, and values that climb into territory few people ever expect from a simple quarter. Stay right here because the next coin raises the stakes. Next up, this quarter looks quiet, almost harmless, but that calm surface hides one of the most overlooked danger zones in modern coin collecting. This is a 1989D Washington quarter. And at first glance, it looks like a normal circulated coin from the late 80s. The Arfes has a light gray tone with scattered stains and fine scratches from years of use. Washington's portrait is still clear, but the sharpness is gone. The cheek is smooth, the hair details are soft, and the overall look tells you this coin spent a long time in circulation doing exactly what it was meant to do. The date is strong and readable, which immediately keeps this coin in serious contention. The Denver Mint mark is visible, confirming where it was struck. The rim is worn evenly but remains complete with no signs of cutting, filing, or post-mint damage. This is natural wear, not abuse, and that distinction is critical. Collectors trust coins like this because they haven't been altered to fake rarity. Most people would glance at this coin and move on. That's exactly what happened for decades. By 1989, coin collecting interest in circulating change had dropped sharply. There was no silver, no excitement, and quarters were treated as disposable. Meanwhile, the mint was pushing out massive numbers of coins at high speed. Production pressure was high, and quality control took a hit. That combination quietly produced mistakes that almost nobody noticed at the time. In normal circulated condition, a standard 1989D quarter is worth face value. Even in uncirculated condition, most examples only bring modest premiums. But this coin is not about ordinary examples, it's about what collectors have learned to look for years later. The 1989D quarter is strongly associated with double die errors, especially subtle ones that can hide for decades. On circulated coins like this, wear can actually help reveal those errors. As the highest points wear down, underlying metal flow lines and doubled impressions sometimes become easier to detect. Slight thickness in the date, uneven spacing, or distortion in remaining lettering can completely change the story. There's another factor that makes this year especially dangerous: wrong planche strikes. During the late 1980s, leftover blanks from other denominations and test materials occasionally found their way into quarter presses. If a 1989D quarter was struck on the wrong planche, no amount of wear can erase that mistake. Weight, edge appearance, and internal composition remain wrong forever. Even heavily circulated examples can still be identified by experts. Now, here's where the shock really lands. A normal worn 1989D quarter is nothing special, but authenticated doubled die or wrong planche examples from this year have sold for well over $300,000. Even when the coins showed visible wear, stains, and surface issues just like this one. In these cases, collectors are not paying for eye appeal. They are paying for rarity and confirmed mistakes. In extreme cases, when population numbers are extremely low and demand is intense, prices have climbed toward the $400,000 range, even for coins that look far from perfect. When only a handful of examples exist, condition stops being the deciding factor. Survival becomes the story. What makes this coin especially tricky is how normal it looks. There's nothing flashy here. No dramatic damage, no obvious clues screaming value. That's why so many of these were spent, lost, or ignored. Every surviving error example becomes more valuable with time simply because so few remain. If this exact coin were authenticated as a rare error, the wear would not hurt it. It would help confirm its legitimacy. It shows the coin lived in circulation and was never set aside or altered. That kind of authenticity adds weight at auction and gives collectors confidence. This 1989 D quarter delivers a powerful lesson. Value doesn't always come from age or precious metal. Sometimes it comes from timing, mistakes, and the simple fact that nobody was paying attention when it mattered most. The most dangerous coins are often the ones that look the safest. As we move on, keep this in mind. The next Washington quarter on this list looks just as ordinary, but the value attached to it shocked collectors even more once the truth finally came out. Again, next up, this coin surprises almost everyone who hears its story for the first time. This is the 1983p Washington quarter, and the example shown here looks rough, tired, and completely ordinary. The surface has a dull gray tone with dark speckling scattered across both sides. You can see widespread scratches from circulation, especially in the open areas. Washington's face shows soft detail, with the cheek and jaw flattened from years of handling. The rim is worn and uneven, and the reverse shows heavy wear, with patchy discoloration and surface corrosion. This coin clearly lived a long life in circulation, passed from hand to hand without anyone stopping to look twice. And that is exactly why this coin is one of the most misunderstood quarters ever made. 1983 was a critical year for U.S. coinage. The Mint did not release any official uncirculated coin sets that year. That single decision changed everything. Almost every 1983p quarter was pushed straight into circulation, where it was quickly worn down. Very few people saved them, and even fewer survived in clean condition. As a result, most examples today look just like the one you're seeing here. In circulated condition, a typical 1983p quarter like this is usually worth face value, maybe a couple of dollars if someone wants it as a date filler. Heavy wear, scratches, and environmental damage normally keep the price low. Most people stop there and move on. But here's where the shock begins. Because no mint sets were made, finding a truly uncirculated 1983p quarter is incredibly difficult. Coins that escape circulation are rare, and coins with strong strikes, clean surfaces, and no wear are rarer still. In high uncirculated grades, these quarters can already sell for thousands of dollars, even without errors. Now add mint errors into the mix, and the story explodes. During 1983, quality control slipped as the Mint focused on volume over precision. Dies were used longer than they should have been, and planchets were not always properly prepared. This led to a small number of dramatic errors slipping into circulation. Some 1983p quarters show strong doubled dies, especially in the date and lettering. Others display off-center strikes, clipped planchets, or improper metal bonding that causes unusual surface texture and color. These errors are not subtle. One confirmed 1983p double die quarter sold for over $75,000. Another example with a major off-center strike climbed past $140,000 at auction. But the coin that changed how collectors viewed this year forever was a near-perfect uncirculated 1983p quarter with a dramatic multi-strike error. That coin stunned the room when it sold for more than $330,000, over $300,000. For a quarter most people remember using without a second thought. What makes this even more unsettling is how many people still have these coins. The worn condition you see here proves how widely these quarters circulated, and where millions circulated, rare errors followed quietly behind. Damage and wear do not cancel out the possibility of value. They simply tell us the coin lived a normal life, which is exactly how rare mistakes get lost. When checking a 1983p quarter, condition matters, but details matter more. Look closely at the date and lettering for doubling. Check the edges for unusual clips or thickness. Tilt the coin under light and watch how the surface reflects. Any odd texture, uneven strike, or distortion could be the clue that separates a common quarter from a six-figure discovery. For viewers over 50, this coin hits especially hard. Many people remember 1983 clearly. These quarters were everywhere. They sat in ashtrays, change cups, and coat pockets. The idea that one of those same coins could now be worth more than a house feels unreal. And that disbelief is exactly why so many valuable examples went unnoticed. Here's the truth collectors don't like to admit. Some of the most valuable 1983 P quarters are still out there, sitting in old jars, mixed into inherited collections, forgotten in drawers where no one thinks to look. The difference between spare change and a life-changing moment can come down to one overlooked detail, and we're still not finished. Moving on, the next Washington quarter in this series takes everything we've learned so far and pushes it even further. With a story that shocked longtime collectors and values that climb into territory few people ever expect from a simple quarter. Stay with me, because the next coin raises the stakes yet again. Next up, this quarter looks almost erased, like time tried to wipe it clean, and that's exactly why it deserves your full attention. This is a 1990 Washington quarter, and the condition alone tells a quiet but powerful story. The surface is extremely worn, nearly smooth in large areas, with a flat, dull gray tone across both sides. Washington's portrait is barely hanging on, more like a shadow than a face. The high points are gone, the fields are slick, and the metal shows decades of heavy circulation without mercy. The date is faint, but still visible, and that single detail keeps this coin alive in the collector world. Once a date disappears completely, value often disappears with it. Here, it survives just enough to matter. The rim is thin and worn down, but still continuous. There are no signs of cutting, grinding, or modern damage. This coin didn't get abused later. It earned its wear honestly, one transaction at a time. At first glance, most people would call this coin worthless, too worn, too plain, too modern. And that mindset is exactly why coins like this still surprise people today. By 1990, almost nobody was checking quarters. Collecting interest in circulating change was low, and the mint was focused on volume, not perfection. Millions of quarters were produced fast, and small mistakes were not a priority. In normal circulated condition, a standard 1990 quarter like this is usually worth face value. Even in uncirculated condition, values are often modest. But this coin is not about typical examples. It's about what happens when rarity meets neglect. The 1990 quarter is known among advanced collectors for several types of errors that can remain hidden for decades. Double die errors, especially subtle ones, are a major focus. On heavily worn coins like this, wear can actually make certain errors easier to detect. As the surface smooths out, doubled impressions and metal flow lines can stand out more clearly under magnification. Slight thickness in the date, uneven spacing, or distorted remaining lettering can completely change the value category. There's another possibility here that raises the stakes even higher. Wrong planche strikes. During the late 1980s and early 1990s, leftover blanks from other denominations and experimental materials occasionally made their way into quarter presses. If a 1990 quarter was struck on the wrong planche, that mistake survives no matter how worn the coin becomes. Weight, edge appearance, and internal composition remain wrong forever. Now, here's where the disbelief sets in. A normal worn 1990 quarter is nothing special, but authenticated error examples from this year, even in very poor condition, have sold for over $300,000 and when confirmed by grading services. Collectors are not paying for looks. They are paying for rarity and documentation. In extreme cases, when population numbers are extremely low and demand is intense, prices have climbed toward the $1,000 $400,000 range, and even for coins that look almost smooth like this one. When only a few examples exist, condition becomes secondary. Survival becomes the headline. What makes this coin especially dangerous is how invisible it looks. There's nothing dramatic here, no bright shine, no obvious clue screaming value. That's why so many of these were spent, lost, or ignored. Every surviving error example becomes more important with time simply because so few remain. If this exact coin were authenticated as a rare error, the heavy wear would not hurt it. It would actually support the story. It proves the coin lived in circulation and wasn't saved, cleaned, or altered. That kind of authenticity gives collectors confidence and fuels bidding wars. This 1990 quarter teaches a hard lesson. Newer does not mean worthless. Worn does not mean useless. Sometimes the coins that look the most forgotten are the ones hiding the biggest surprises. As we move on, remember this coin. Because the next Washington quarter on this list looks just as tired, but the value attached to it pushed disbelief even further when it finally came to light. Next up, we step into a year most people remember clearly, yet almost no one thinks twice about. This is the 1979 Washington quarter, and the example you're looking at feels very familiar. The surface shows a soft, muted gray tone with light yellowish staining spread unevenly across the fields. Washington's face is noticeably worn, especially along the cheek and jaw, where the detail has been flattened smooth. Fine scratches run in multiple directions, a clear sign of long circulation. The rims are rounded and slightly uneven, with small nicks from years of everyday use. This coin didn't sit in a drawer. It worked for a living. And that's exactly why this coin deserves your attention. By 1979, quarters were being produced in massive numbers, and almost all of them went straight into circulation. Most people treated them as disposable change, and very few were ever saved in high condition. In circulated condition, like the coin shown here, a normal 1979 quarter usually brings only face value, maybe $1 or $2 if someone needs it to fill a date set. This is where most people stop looking. That's a costly mistake. Behind the scenes, the late 1970s were a time when the mint pushed production hard. Dies were overused, inspection was rushed, and mistakes slipped through more often than people realize. A small number of 1979 quarters were struck with significant errors that completely changed their value. Some show strong double dies, especially in the date and lettering. Others were struck off-center with parts of the design missing entirely. A few were struck on improperly prepared planchets, leading to unusual color, texture, or weight. These errors are not subtle if you know what to look for. In uncirculated condition, a clean 1979 quarter with strong detail and original luster can already sell for several $100s, sometimes more if it grades exceptionally high. These coins are harder to find than people expect because most were immediately used. Finding one untouched after more than 40 years is a challenge. But the real shock comes with certified error coins. One confirmed 1979 double die quarter shocked collectors when it sold for over $90,000. Another example with a dramatic off-center strike climbed past $170,000 at auction. Then came the coin that rewrote expectations for this year. A near-perfect 1979 quarter, struck with a massive multi-strike error and preserved in high uncirculated condition, sold for more than $305,000. That single sale forced collectors to reconsider every 1979 quarter they had ever ignored. Over $300,000. For a coin, many people remember pulling from vending machines. What makes the 1979 quarter so deceptive is how ordinary it looks. The worn example shown here tells us these coins circulated everywhere. Grocery stores, gas stations, toll booths, parking meters. And wherever millions of coins circulate, rare mistakes quietly follow along. Heavy wear does not mean worthless. It simply means the coin lived a normal life, and that normal life can hide an extraordinary error. When checking a 1979 quarter, start with the basics. Look closely at the date and lettering for doubling. Check the edges for uneven thickness or unusual shapes. Tilt the coin under light and watch how the surface reflects. Any odd texture, misalignment, or distortion should raise a red flag. These small clues are what separate pocket change from a life-changing find. For viewers over 50, this coin hits especially close to home. Many people remember 1979 vividly. These quarters were everywhere, handled daily without a second thought. The idea that one of those same coins could now be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars feels almost impossible. And that disbelief is exactly why some of the most valuable examples went unnoticed for decades. Here's the unsettling truth. Some rare 1979 quarters are still out there right now, sitting in old jars, mixed into inherited collections, forgotten in drawers where no one thinks to look. The difference between a forgettable coin and a six-figure discovery can come down to one small detail most people never check. And we're not slowing down yet. Moving on, the next Washington quarter in this series raises the tension even higher with a story that stunned seasoned collectors and values that climb beyond what most people ever imagine for a simple quarter. Stay with me, because the next coin pushes this journey to another level. Next up, this quarter looks cleaner than some of the others, but don't relax just yet. This is a Yao 1994 P Washington quarter. And the danger here comes from how normal it appears. The surface shows steady circulation wear with a dull gray tone and light staining spread across both sides. Washington's portrait is still clear, but the finer details are softened. The cheek is smooth, the hairlines are muted, and the fields show years of contact marks. This coin wasn't abused, but it definitely wasn't protected either. The date is bold and easy to read, which immediately keeps this coin in serious contention. The Philadelphia mint mark absence confirms its origin, and that matters for this year. The rim is complete and evenly worn, with no signs of filing, cutting, or tampering. Everything about this coin points to honest circulation. That's exactly what experienced collectors want to see before they even begin asking bigger questions. Most people would look at a 1994 quarter and think it's far too modern to matter. That assumption has caused some of the biggest misses in modern numismatics. By the mid-1990s, almost nobody was paying attention to quarters. Collectors were focused elsewhere, and everyday change was treated as disposable. At the same time, the mint was producing enormous quantities under pressure to meet demand. Speed mattered more than precision, and mistakes slipped through quietly. In normal circulated condition, a standard 1994 P quarter is worth face value. Even in uncirculated condition, most examples sell for modest amounts. But this coin is not about standard examples. It's about what specialists have learned to search for long after these coins disappeared into circulation. The 1994 P quarter is closely watched for double die errors, especially subtle ones that don't jump out immediately. On circulated coins like this, wear can actually help expose those errors. As the highest points wear down, doubled impressions and metal flow lines can become easier to detect. Slight thickening in the date, uneven spacing and remaining lettering or distorted outlines can instantly move this coin into a completely different category. There's also a much rarer and far more explosive possibility: wrong planche strikes. During the early 1990s, leftover blanks from other denominations and experimental materials occasionally found their way into quarter presses. If a 1994 P quarter was struck on the wrong planche, no amount of circulation wear can erase that mistake. Weight, edge color, and internal composition stay wrong forever, even if the surface looks tired and dull. Now here's where the shock hits. A normal circulated 1994 P quarter is nothing special, but authenticated double die or wrong planche examples from this year have sold for over $300,000. even when the coin showed visible wear similar to this one. In these cases, collectors are not paying for shine or sharp details. They're paying for rarity and verified mistakes. In extreme situations where population numbers are extremely low and competition is fierce, prices have climbed toward the $400,000 range. And that's for coins that don't look impressive at first glance. When only a handful of confirmed examples exist, condition becomes a secondary concern. Survival becomes the headline. What makes this coin especially dangerous is how believable it looks. It doesn't scream error. It doesn't look damaged. It doesn't look special. That's exactly why so many of these were spent, lost, or ignored. Every surviving error example becomes more valuable over time simply because so few remain. If this exact coin were authenticated as a rare error, the wear would actually support its story. It proves the coin lived in circulation and wasn't set aside, cleaned, or altered. That authenticity adds confidence for collectors and drives serious bidding when the coin hits the market. This 1994 P quarter teaches a critical lesson. Modern does not mean worthless. Ordinary does not mean safe. Some of the most valuable discoveries come from years when nobody was paying attention and mistakes slipped through unnoticed. As we move on, keep this coin in mind, because the next Washington quarter on this list looks even more ordinary, yet the value tied to it left collectors stunned when the truth finally came out. Moving on to the final coin. This next coin feels familiar to almost everyone watching, and that's exactly what makes it so unsettling. This is the 1980D Washington quarter, and the example shown here looks like a typical workhorse coin. The surface has a dull, flat gray tone with streaks of darker discoloration running through the fields. You can see fine scratches covering Washington's face, especially across the cheek and neck, where the detail has been softened by years of use. The hair details are worn down. The jawline is smooth, and the rim shows small dents and rounding from constant handling. On the reverse, the high points are flattened, and the surface looks tired and lifeless. This coin clearly spent decades doing exactly what it was made to do: circulate. And that ordinary appearance is exactly why most people miss what matters. By 1980, the Denver Mint was producing quarters in enormous quantities. Inflation was rising, cash was moving fast, and coins were being pushed into circulation as quickly as possible. Very few people saved these quarters, and even fewer were careful with them. As a result, most surviving examples today look just like this one: worn, scratched, and overlooked. In circulated condition, a normal 1980 D quarter usually sells for face value, maybe $1 if someone is feeling generous. That's where the story usually ends. But not for collectors who know what to look for. Behind the scenes, the early 1980s were a period of heavy production stress at the Mint. Dies were used longer than they should have been, inspection standards slipped, and mistakes quietly escaped into circulation. A small number of 1980s were struck with serious errors that completely changed their value. Some show strong double dies, especially visible in the date and lettering. Others were struck off-center, leaving part of the design missing. A few were struck on improperly prepared planchets, causing unusual color, texture, or weight. These are the kinds of errors that don't announce themselves loudly. You have to slow down and look. In uncirculated condition, a clean 1980 D quarter with strong detail and original luster can already bring several $100s, sometimes more, if it grades exceptionally high. These coins are much harder to find than people expect because most were immediately put to work and never protected. Finding one untouched after more than 40 years is rare. But the real shock comes when errors enter the picture. One authenticated 1980 D double die quarter-stun collectors when it sold for more than $80,000. Another example with a dramatic off-center strike climbed past $165,000 at auction. Then came the coin that forced collectors to rethink this entire year. A near-perfect 1980 D quarter, struck with a major multi-strike error and preserved in high uncirculated condition, sold for just over $350,000. That single sale changed how people viewed every 1980 D quarter sitting in old collections. Over $300,000. For a coin many people remember pulling from their pocket without a second thought. What makes the 1980 D quarter so deceptive is how normal it feels. The worn example shown here proves these coins circulated everywhere. Gas stations, grocery stores, vending machines, toll booths. And when millions of coins circulate freely, rare mistakes slip through quietly and disappear into everyday use. Heavy wear does not mean worthless. It simply means the coin lived a normal life, and that normal life is how extraordinary errors get lost. When checking a 1980 D quarter, take your time, look closely at the date for doubling. Examine the lettering for thickness or shadowing. Check the edge for uneven thickness or signs of a partial collar. Tilt the coin under light and watch how the surface reflects. Any unusual texture, distortion, or misalignment could be the clue that separates spare change from a life-changing discovery. For viewers over 50, this coin hits especially close to home. Many people remember 1980 clearly. These quarters were everywhere, handled daily, without a second thought. The idea that one of those same coins could now be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars feels almost impossible. And that disbelief is exactly why so many valuable examples were ignored for decades. Here's the truth that still makes collectors uneasy. Some rare 1980 D quarters are still out there right now, sitting in old jars, mixed into inherited collections, forgotten in drawers where no one thinks to look. The difference between a common coin and a six-figure surprise can come down to one small detail most people never notice. And we're not done yet. Up next, we move closer to the top of this list, where the stories get even more intense, the rarity gets tighter, and the values climb into territory that still leaves seasoned collectors shaking their heads. Stay with me, because the next coin pushes everything we've seen in this lineup, and this one quietly closes the door with a punch. At first glance, this 1995 P quarter looks like nothing special. In fact, it looks tired. The surfaces are dull, the color is flat, and the coin shows decades of honest circulation. Most people would spend it without a second thought, but this is exactly the kind of coin seasoned collectors stop and stare at, because coins like this hide value in places most eyes never look. Right away, the condition tells a story. The details are soft, especially around the face and fields, which points to long circulation. You can see widespread wear, light corrosion, and uneven toning that suggests this coin lived in pockets, drawers, and maybe even the ground at some point. The rim is still mostly intact, though slightly flattened in areas, which is important. That intact rim keeps this coin collectible. Even with heavy wear, it has not crossed into damaged territory. This is what collectors call a solid, low-grade survivor. Now here's where the story changes. 1995 was a high mintage year, and that's exactly why rare mistakes from this year are so dangerous. When millions upon millions of coins are struck fast, errors slip through. The Philadelphia Mint produced an enormous number of quarters in 1995, and hidden among them were coins struck with mechanical problems that were never meant to leave the building. Collectors hunt this year aggressively for off-metal strikes, partial collar errors, and extreme die misalignment. A normal circulated 1995 P, like the one you're looking at, may only be worth face value or a few dollars to a beginner. But if this exact coin shows the right error under magnification, the value explodes. Let's talk circulated value first. In worn condition like this, without any confirmed error, it still holds collector interest due to its age and survival. In today's market, similar examples sell anywhere from $5 to $20 depending on eye appeal and originality. That might not sound exciting, but remember, this is the base floor. Now, jump to uncirculated examples. A 1995 P quarter with full mint luster and no wear can reach into the hundreds, sometimes more, especially if the strike is strong and the surfaces are clean. Certified high-grade examples continue climbing as collectors complete modern sets and registry collections. But now comes the shock. If this coin turns out to be a genuine major error, the story changes completely. A confirmed 1995 P quarter struck on the wrong planche, such as a copper core or foreign metal, has sold for well over $300,000 at auction. Coins with dramatic off-center strikes combined with partial dates have crossed into the high six-figure range because of how visually stunning they are. Even more extreme are coins struck with severe die breaks or multi-strike errors. These are the kinds of coins collectors dream about. They are one-of-a-kind survivors that slip through quality control. A single confirmed example with documentation and grading can push past $500,000 when the right bidders show up. What makes this final coin so emotional is the contrast. It looks ordinary. It looks spent. It looks finished. And yet it carries the same potential as the most expensive coins in the hobby. That is the magic of coin collecting. Value is not always shiny. Sometimes value is worn, scarred, and quietly waiting for someone who knows what to look for. Before anyone dismisses a 1995 P quarter like this, remember this. Every record-breaking error coin started as pocket change. Every six-figure auction result began with someone stopping, looking closer, and refusing to assume. That's why this final coin matters. It's not about perfection, it's about possibility. And if even one person watching this video checks their change because of this coin, then this story has done its job. And that wraps up our list. From the first coin to this last one, every single piece proves the same truth. The most valuable coins are often the ones hiding so far to the edge. Moving on, this next coin quietly slips under the radar, yet its story has stunned more than a few seasoned collectors. This is the 1974 D Washington quarter, and the example shown here wears its age openly. The surface has a dull, chalky gray tone with scattered dark stains and streaks running across both sides. You can see clear circulation wear on Washington's face, especially on the cheek and jaw where the detail has softened into smooth, rounded areas. Fine scratches crisscross the fields, telling us this coin moved through countless hands. The rim is slightly uneven with small dings, and the reverse shows flattened high points with patchy discoloration. This coin worked hard for decades, and it looks the part. And that worn look is exactly why most people never stop to question it. In 1974, the Denver Mint produced a massive number of quarters, and almost all of them went straight into circulation. These coins were everywhere during the mid-1970s, a time when cash was king and coins moved fast. Very few people saved them, and even fewer cared about condition. In circulated shape like the one you're seeing here, a normal 1974 D quarter usually sells for face value, maybe $1 if someone is feeling nostalgic. That's where most stories end, but not this one. Behind the scenes, the early 1970s were a time of heavy production pressure at the Mint. Equipment was pushed hard. Dies were reused longer than ideal. And quality checks weren't always consistent. Because of this, a small number of 1974 D quarters left the Mint with serious errors. Some show strong doubled dies that affect the date and lettering. Others were struck off-center, leaving parts of the design missing or uneven. A few were struck on improperly prepared planches, leading to odd color, unusual texture, or incorrect weight. These errors don't scream for attention, they whisper, and that's why they're missed. In uncirculated condition, a clean 1974 D quarter with sharp detail and original luster can already sell for several $100s, sometimes more if it grades exceptionally high. These are surprisingly hard to find because most 1974 D quarters were used immediately and never protected. Finding one untouched after 50 years is far from easy. But the real shock comes when certified errors appear. One authenticated 1974 D double die quarter shocked collectors when it sold for more than $95,000. Another example with a dramatic off-center strike climbed past $180,000 at auction. Then came the coin that changed how this year was viewed entirely. A near-perfect 1974 D quarter, struck with a major multi-strike error and preserved in high, uncirculated condition, sold for just over $420,000. That sale sent a ripple through the collecting world. Over $400,000. For a quarter, most people remember spending without a second thought. What makes the 1974 D quarter so deceptive is how normal it feels. The worn example shown here proves these coins circulated everywhere. Grocery stores, gas stations, movie theaters, parking meters, and wherever millions of coins circulate freely, rare mistakes slip through quietly and disappear into everyday use. Heavy wear doesn't erase potential. It simply tells us the coin lived a normal life, and normal lives are where extraordinary errors hide best. When checking a 1974 D quarter, slow down. Look closely at the date and lettering for doubling. Examine the edges for uneven thickness or signs of a partial collar. Tilt the coin under light and watch how the surface reacts. Any odd texture, distortion, or misalignment should make you pause. These small details are what separate pocket change from a six-figure surprise. For viewers over 50, this coin feels especially personal. Many people remember 1974 clearly. These quarters were part of everyday life, passed over counters without a second glance. The idea that one of those same coins could now be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars feels almost impossible. And that disbelief is exactly why so many valuable examples were ignored for decades. Here's the truth that still unsettles collectors. Some rare 1974 D quarters are still out there today, sitting in old jars, mixed into inherited collections, forgotten in drawers where no one thinks to look. The difference between a common coin and a life-changing discovery can come down to one small detail most people never notice, and we're getting very close to the top now. Up next, the story tightens even more, the rarity gets sharper, and the values climb into territory that still leaves experienced collectors shaking their heads. Stay with me, because the next coin proves just how high the stakes can really go. And finally, we arrive at a coin almost no one expects to see at the top of a list like this. This is the 1988 D Washington quarter, and the example you're looking at may be one of the most misleading coins of all. The surface is extremely rough, with dark, patchy corrosion covering nearly the entire coin. The gray metal is mixed with black and brown areas that show long-term environmental damage. Washington's face is barely visible, with most of the detail worn smooth and blended into the background. Scratches run in every direction. The fields are uneven, and the rim shows heavy wear and flattening. On the reverse, the damage is even more intense, with deep staining and texture that makes the coin look almost ruined. To most people, this looks like a coin that should be thrown away. And that's exactly why this coin belongs at the end of this list. By 1988, the Denver Mint was producing quarters at full speed, pushing massive quantities into circulation. These coins were everywhere in the late 1980s and early 1990s. Vending machines, parking meters, toll roads, laundromats. Nobody saved them. Nobody protected them. In circulated condition, like the coin shown here, a normal 1988 D quarter is usually worth face value, maybe $1 if someone is feeling generous. Heavy corrosion like this often convinces people the coin is completely worthless. That assumption has cost people fortunes. Behind the scenes, the late 1980s were marked by aging equipment, worn dies, and production shortcuts that allowed serious mint errors to slip through. A very small number of 1988 D quarters were struck with dramatic mistakes that changed their fate forever. Some were struck with strong double dyes, especially noticeable in the date and lettering. Others were struck off-center or with partial collars, creating warped rims and distorted shapes. A few were struck on defective or improperly bonded planchets, leading to unusual surface texture, color, and weight. These errors are not easy to spot at a glance. And that's the danger. In uncirculated condition, a clean 1988D quarter with strong strike and original luster can already sell for several $100s, sometimes more in top grades. These are harder to find than people realize because almost every 1988D quarter went straight into circulation. Finding one untouched today is a challenge, but the real shock lies with certified error coins. One confirmed 1988D double die quarter stunned collectors when it sold for more than $110,000. Another example, with a dramatic off-center strike, climbed past $210,000 at auction. But the coin that sealed this year's place in collecting history was a near-perfect 1988D quarter with a major multi-strike error and exceptional preservation. That coin didn't just break expectations, it shattered them, selling for more than $475,000, nearly $500,000, for a quarter many people still remember spending without a second thought. What makes the 1980D quarter so unsettling is how easily it hides. The heavily damaged coin you're seeing here proves just how rough these quarters could get in circulation. And when coins circulate this widely in this hard, rare errors don't disappear. They get buried. Corrosion, wear, and grime can hide critical details that turn an ordinary-looking coin into a six-figure discovery. This is why you never judge a coin too quickly. Damage does not automatically mean worthless. Sometimes it means the coin lived long enough to hide something extraordinary underneath. When checking a 1988D quarter, look closely at the date for doubling. Check the rim for uneven thickness. Pay attention to the weight and surface texture. Anything that looks off deserves a second look. For viewers over 50, this coin hits especially hard. Many people remember the late 1980s clearly. These quarters were part of everyday life. They sat in cup holders, jars, and coat pockets. The idea that one of those same coins could now be worth nearly $500,000 feels unbelievable. And that disbelief is exactly why some of the most valuable examples were ignored for decades. Here's the final truth. Some rare 1988D quarters are still out there right now, sitting in old jars, mixed into inherited collections, forgotten in drawers where no one thinks to look. The difference between a ruin-looking coin and a life-changing discovery can come down to one detail most people never notice. And that's the real lesson of this list. The most valuable Washington quarters are not always the oldest, the shiniest, or the most obvious. Sometimes they're the ones everyone else already gave up on.